Hi there, students at Cooper's Crossing. I understand you're doing a little reading today, and I'll tell you what, reading is something that I've always really loved and really enjoyed. I remember, when I was your age, I probably used to read, almost every night a book. I'd take home something from the library, and I just couldn't get enough reading. It's something I love to do, and I still love to read. I'm working on a couple of books right now myself. One of them is a story about a young woman who was kidnapped in a dangerous place of the world, and it's a story all about her courage and how she got through a really difficult time and the circumstance and came out of that. And then I'm also reading a book called The Captain Class, which is about, it applies sports and what some of the qualities of the best captains of sports teams and how that applies to leadership. So it's obviously something that helps me to learn how I can best be a leader for our community in our Parliament in Ottawa. And so I really enjoy reading, and I hope it's something you all enjoy too. So I wanted to just share with you a little book that was one that in my childhood I really enjoyed. It was called The Hockey Sweater by Ross Carrier, and it's a well-known Canadian iconic book, I would say, and it really is something for me that brings lots of good memories from childhood. Not only because I love hockey, I'm sure there's a few of you out there who play hockey as well, and it's something that I did a lot of when I was going to school. And one of my heroes, even though he wasn't really still playing hockey when I was a kid, was Maurice the Rocket Richard. He used to play for the Montreal Canadiens. He's one of the greatest players of all times, and certainly one of the best goal scorers ever. And I always wore the number 9 because my name, Richards, was so similar to his last name, and he was a player I looked up to, and so number 9 was my number. And so the book being about him and his sweater is something that really I found resonated with me and I thought was really cool. So I want to share that book with you today. So rather than read the entire book to you, I'm going to just tell you a little bit. So the story is about a young man who grew up, and all of the kids in his town idolized the Rocket, Maurice Richard, and they all wore his sweater when they played their games on the ice. And unfortunately his sweater had gotten torn and tattered a bit, and his mom decided to order him a new one. And so this is the book where I'll pick up, is at the moment when he opens the new package with the new sweater, and what happens from there on out. So here's the hockey sweater. So he opens the package and says, "That day I had one of the greatest disappointments of my life. Instead of the red, white, and blue Montreal Canadiens sweater, Mr. Eaton had sent the blue and white sweater of the Toronto Maple Leafs. I had always worn the red, white, and blue sweater of the Montreal Canadiens. All my friends wore the red, white, and blue sweater. Never had anyone in my village worn the Toronto sweater. Besides, the Toronto team was always being beaten by the Canadiens. With tears in my eyes, I found the strength to say, 'I'll never wear that uniform.' 'My boy,' said my mother, 'first you're going to try it on. If you make up your mind about something before you try it, you won't go very far in this life.' So my mother had pulled the blue and white Toronto Maple Leafs sweater over my head and put my arms into the sleeves. She pulled the sweater down and carefully smoothed the maple leaf right in the middle of my chest. I was crying. 'I can't wear that.' 'Why not? This sweater is a perfect fit. Maurice Richard would never wear it.' 'You're not Maurice Richard. Besides, it's not what you put on your back that matters. It's what you put inside your head.' 'You'll never make me put in my head to wear a Toronto Maple Leafs sweater.' My mother sighed in despair and explained to me, 'If you don't keep this sweater which fits you perfectly, I'll have to write to Mr. Eaton and explain that you don't want to wear the Toronto sweater. Mr. Eaton understands French perfectly, but he's English, and he's going to be insulted because he likes the Maple Leafs. If he's insulted, do you think he'll be in a hurry to answer us? Spring will come before you play a single game just because you don't want to wear that nice blue sweater.' So I had to wear the Toronto Maple Leafs sweater. When I arrived at the skating rink in my blue sweater, all the Maurice Richards in red, white, and blue came one by one and looked at me. The referee blew his whistle, and I went to take my usual position. The coach came over and told me I would be on the second line. A few minutes later, the second line was called, and I jumped onto the ice. The Maple Leaf sweater weighed on my shoulders like a mountain. The captain came and told me to wait he'd need me later, on defense. By the third period, I still had not played. Then one of the defensemen was hit on the nose with a stick and it started to bleed. I jumped onto the ice. My moment had came. The referee blew his whistle and gave me a penalty. He said there were already 5 players on the ice. That was too much. It was too unfair. "This is persecution," I shouted. "It's just because of my blue sweater." I crashed my stick against the ice so hard it broke. I bent down to pick up the pieces, and when I got up, the young curate on skates was standing in front of me. "My child," he said, "just because you're wearing a new Toronto Maple Leafs sweater, it doesn't mean you're going to make the laws around here. A good boy never loses his temper. Take off your skates and go to the church and ask God to forgive you." Wearing my Maple Leaf sweater, I went to the church where I prayed to God. I asked God to send me right away 100 million moths that would eat up my Toronto Maple Leafs sweater. And that's the story of the hockey sweater.